Welcome back to the channel. I want to show you guys how to read scopes, your waveform, and your vector scope, and how it relates to what we're seeing on screen with bars and a couple other images to help show you what you're doing while you're adjusting your image versus the known values from the bars. So let's take a look. So here I got bars from our signal generator, and I'll open up our scopes here. And one important thing that I have on is under this three-dot menu, I have display qualifier focus enabled right here. This will give you this little dot or bubble around wherever the values are sitting with your qualifier. And that helps to see where you're looking at on your screen. And if we have both our vector scope and a parade or waveform open, you can see it'll highlight on both scopes. So let's take a look at what the bars are doing and what all the values mean, where they're sitting. Now basically in post, we always had bars on any piece of media that we worked on. That'd be back in the tape days, and then when we moved to just pure digital files, you'd have bars and you run it through and you look at the scopes like we were looking at a minute ago. And this is going to let you know, are the black points sitting where they're supposed to be, or the white points, and then all the colors in between, are they sitting where they're supposed to be in a known value? If they were off, you knew something was wrong. And this is supposed to be representative of what the images or the movie or the feature you're working on is supposed to correlate with those bar levels. So let's jump back in. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now if we go down here where the black level is, you can see on the scope, and I'll zoom this in a little bit further. Let's go back down to just this, and we'll look at the vector in just a minute. Right now, if we hover over the black, you can see where our bubbles are on all the values. We have everything sitting at 0. If we go to our white level up here, you can see it's peaked at 700. Now, how we have this waveform set up is this first column is our luminance values, so it's just the white and the black information. Then we have a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel, and that pretty much makes up all of our color info. So how this works is everything's set at a fixed value. The black levels are going to be sitting right at 0, or they should be, and the purest white should be sitting at the top. We have the gray point, which is a mid-gray, and then we have our yellow, our cyan, our greens, and this kind of comes into play with the vector scope a little more. Let's just change this back to 1, and I'll move this to vector scope. And I have this set up where we're looking at both vector scopes. So if we click this three-dot option menu, I actually have it on 75 and 100. By default, it's at 75. So what this means is where these color values are fixed, if they line up in the box here, that means the saturation is correct. So this range here is your 75% saturation. So you could see our magenta, our red, our yellow, our blue, our green, and cyan are all sitting correctly. And then if we open this back up and say we want to see the 100% targets, those boxes move, and those are showing you 100% saturation, which is supposed to be the peak level of where these colors can go. And I'll sort of back that up in a minute when we look at some other values on some other images. So now I have both showing up. Now how that relates here is, you see how we have this little gray shadow area here. If we look at cyan, you could see based on where our little bubble is in the vector, this is our 75% value. If we come up here, you can see the bubble shifts. That's our 100% value. So these two sections is the difference between 100% on all these colors and 75%. And then of course black is in the center because there's no color value. So in the vector scope, this is dead center is pretty much pure black, pure white. And then as you lean towards a color, it'll start saturating. Now let's go back to our dual view. We have parade. You might have it on waveform quite often. Now it looks like a perfect stair-step pattern here. But what I want to show you is if we start manipulating the image here, keep an eye on the vector and keep an eye on the waveform. And on the gain, I'm going to lower our red channel. Now look how everything gets out of alignment. See how we can see red now? And same thing if we lowered our blue channel, we're going to start seeing blue. So everything's lined up perfect because all the values are represented equal across the board. And as soon as we start moving, you can see our colors come into play. Our vector scope starts getting all askew. The bars are here to let us know all the values of all the colors, which is everything from the darkest black to the whitest peak, and all the colors in between are all represented equally. So let's see how that correlates when we look at an image. So here we have an outdoor image. This was shot, I think, in 2020, Rec 2020. And as we could see, it's got some good saturation. Obviously, we have more blue because more blue's in the image here. And if we go forward, we've got some peaking sun, some highlights, and you can see it hard peaks right here, especially if we go to a one scope view. You can see this hard line right here. That correlates with this super bright portion of the image where the sun is just peaked. Now I wanted to show you guys something with that on how your scopes work and how some of your color tools work. Now I'm going to go over here to this car shot. I'm going to reset this image. Here's what it came in like. So you can see these hard lines here where everything is clipped. So that means the brightest part of the image here, you can't get any brighter. And if we zoom in, there's no detail there. And even if we bring our gain level down, you can see that that line still stays right here. We still have a clipped hard edge, even though we brought down the intensity. So keep an eye on this line, and then we'll bounce back and forth between that part of the image. So it's just blooming headlight. I'm going to go to my highlights and start rolling it down. Now, not only is it decreasing in luminance, look how wide that peak is getting now here. See how it's soft? It's no longer a hard defined line. And if we look at the image here, let's just go back and forth. We're going from this hard, super bright, overexposed to like a softer. Now we can still bring our gain back up, but that highlight isn't going to be just clipped and overexposed. And this also works with black levels as well. So I want you to look at what we're seeing in the image here versus what's on our scope. This also correlates, like I said, in the black level. You can see we're not quite down to pure black here. We're floating. So if we were to move our black level way down here, you can see we're losing any of this detail. If we zoom in and kind of come down, we have some shadows in the building here and a little bit of just the ambient light kind of coming in. If we come down and it's pure black, we lose all that information. There's no detail and you can't get that back actually. So I'm going to go to another shot just to show you what I mean with the black level. Here we have this shot and I didn't do a lot to it. I'm going to reset it. This is a log shot. And you might get some footage like this and say, this looks wrong, something's up with it. This just means the range is, I don't want to say cut off, but contained, where the highest peak is going to be, right about here. And the black point's here. Now that means we can kind of open the image up, where if we shot it in a way like this, we're already, at our limit here with the peak on this one, and the black level is already at its highest. I don't know if we have any pure black in this shot, but basically it's kind of predefined here with that shot. Whereas if we go here, we have the chance to define that. So what I'm going to do is just a simple lift gamma gain. I'm going to move the lift and just float it above the black level to 0, and not the whole thing, this little tiny point right here. So I'm just going to barely tap it. And then with our peak, obviously this isn't daylight, but for this example, I'll bring it up pretty high, close to 700, but not quite. So now if we look at this image before and after, by bringing that black level down, we've got it sitting where it's not crushing the blacks. And the peak is bright, but it's not overly exposed like what we were looking at in the last shot. You can think of your gamma as your midpoints. So lift would be your black. Gain is going to be this brighter part, this little outdoor section, or even the highlight. And then the gamma is going to be all this middle of the scope information. So let's just adjust that and let's watch what it's doing. So you can see that black level down at the bottom stays. So as we toggle this back and forth, the black point's fixed, but it is bringing up the overall middle. And then the white point is staying there. And we're just kind of moving the stuff in the middle. Now, as you move that, it is going to change your black level point. But I just wanted to show you that point on what lift gamma gain does to an image, where you can go from that to that just by those couple adjustments. Nothing too crazy. Now, I want to show you another thing when it comes to your curves and your bars Here we have a grayscale. This is representing pure black to pure white, and everything is just black and white, but a linear scale. So if we look at our scope, we've got the black in the bottom left and the very peak on the upper right. Now, you can change, much like we did here with our gamma, where's the darkest point sitting, where's this middle tone, where when we affect the gamma, this is really controlling the middle tone shadows here on this side where there's light cast. We're going to do the same thing with this grayscale here. Now let's watch the scope. There's a little trick you can do to anchor point your image. So let's say we were going to control the shadow down here, and we wanted the point of where it turns from the darker part of the portion here, where we're getting like a gradient where it's starting to build up. We can manipulate that. So let's say right here, we wanted right about here to have a safe zone. When you're in your custom curves and you have your qualifier enabled, you can click a point on your screen and you can see it makes a little corresponding dot down in your curve. Now that's the color point in which we clicked. And if we want to move that, we can move just that point. So as you can see, that middle point, we're now affecting how long that gradient is. And we're seeing that in this graph here and on our scope. So if we wanted to change how our shadow was rolling off, you could do that and make a real defined line, or you could pull it this way and have a longer shadow. So think about that on the stuff you're working on. If there's a midpoint, if there's a shadow. Same thing with the peak. If we wanted to click here, now we have a new mark here. So anything up here in the highest peak, that'd be changing the overall bright. And if we were just before that, you could see how it's going to roll. See how that line right here in the middle shows up on the screen? That's right there is defining our fixed point that we grabbed. And now we made it so harsh, it does a slight roll off. But think about that in terms of when you're adjusting your image. This is how you're manipulating the gradient from the higher and the darker tones, whether it's any color that you're working with, or this is just demonstrating it in a simple black to white way. But I wanted you to see what it looks like on a simple graph or a simple scale. Look how much you're able to manipulate the midtone and how it rolls off and interacts with each other. So that's going to happen on any of your shots. So if you have a trouble spot, maybe the midtones aren't working out, you could come and grab a fixed point and make a safe zone. So if you wanted the middle to be safe here, and you wanted to come right here and just affect that roll off right in the middle, because you made two anchor points, you kept those areas safe. And now look, you can make it way more subtle. You really got a lot of control here. And I think that graph kind of simplifies it. And you can really see it with that linear line there. All right, so that's all I really wanted to show you on this one, was just your scopes versus your image, what it's telling you, the 100 versus 75, where all your levels are sitting, when you're oversaturated or you're crushing your blacks, all that stuff. So you can use your eyes, and more importantly, also use your scopes. I've known some colors that just dial things in, looking at scopes only, get a really nice balance, and then go from there. And if you're having trouble, you can glance over at your scope and see what's going on. And you learn to read it almost like you do a picture image that you're looking at. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one.